had a victim mentality, the poor me, and didn't know how to use those things at that time to really help me to become who I am today. And even though they still did, I feel like it took me many, many years to get to where I'm at. So I want to get people there quicker. And that's why I say, don't take this as a bad thing, even though it may suck in the moment. Really take whatever you can from it and learn whatever you can. And those skills, the disciplines, whatever it is that you have to go through, use it to your advantage.
Welcome to the Contrarian Capitalist Podcast, the ultimate destination for accredited investors and entrepreneurs seeking alternative wealth building strategies. Discover how to fast-track your journey to wealth and time freedom by thinking outside the box. If you're ready to join the ranks of the Contrarian Capitalists and learn the most effective ways to reach your financial goals faster, you're in the right place. Let's get started with today's episode of the Contrarian Capitalist Podcast.
Thank you once again for joining another episode of the Contrarian Capitalist Podcast. I'm your host and your favorite silverback, Sylvania Harad, and I've been having a lot of information of people sending me. They want me to interview some of these silverback leaders that I refer to that I have in my network. So one of the things that I wanted to bring you is my first guest on the Contrarian Capitalist Podcast. Her name is Tara Zaluski. So Tara Zaluski is a powerhouse leader, entrepreneur, and strategist, known for her no-nonsense approach to success. I'm going to tell you guys that is 100% true. So I hope you have your big boy pants on, because she's going to bring some information. And she thrives on structure, high standards, and results. Her journey is one of resilience, overcoming personal and professional adversity to build systems that work. She doesn't just inspire change, she demands it. So let me give you guys a couple cents about Tara. So we met in New York last year, and there's a few people that you interact with and you just recognize their strength, their character, and the things that they just behold upon them. And I just knew at some point in time, I wanted to engage and interact with her. And so that's the reason why I have her on our podcast today. And so Tara, good afternoon. How are you today?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm just recovering from a little illness. So periodically, if I go on mute, it's because my kids are human petri dishes. It always makes it lots of fun.
Oh, I hear you. I have been sick for months now because of my kids. Every time I feel like I'm finally getting better, they bring something else home.
Right. It makes it interesting. And so I have a couple friends who don't have kids, and they're like, man, you always get sick. And then a couple years passes and they start having children. And then they're like, they really are human petri dishes. Mm-hmm. And I go, yeah, brother, 100%. So just thinking about your intro, tell me, who is Tara Zaluski, and just have fun with it.
So I guess I would say, where do you want me to start would be a good place, right? Because this could be high school years. This could be when I started the real estate journey. I mean, where do we begin? I mean, there's a lot to say.
I like it from a space of what makes you you?
So I think what makes me me is the difficulties and the things that I've gone through throughout my life. Yeah. And through those things, I have become cultured in different ways, gained that strength, right? Gained that discipline. Mm-hmm. So starting at a young age, my mom wasn't really a part of my life. So that, set the stage, and learning how to deal with those things in maybe a not so great way. And then through the years, learning how to deal with them better, right? And at 16, I was put into an all-girls home, just trying to deal with the different struggles of life, not knowing how to deal with them at such a young age. And my parents thought that was probably the best place to put me, I guess, at that time. So, once again, being thrown into a culture I didn't know, an area I didn't know anyone there. And I was also the only white person there.
Really?
So, yeah. So that was different for me, And through that, though, I learned that they had a program that you could actually stay there and begin working again, because when you were there, you weren't allowed to do anything at all. There was no phone, no TV, no going outside, no going to school, nothing. So through the program, I learned you could stay there. I could actually go back to school, and I could it was a requirement to get a job and save 70% of my money. So through that experience, I decided to stay there. I decided also to stay at my current school, which meant I had to get up at 4:30 in the morning, take 2 buses to school, take 2 buses back home, which was just public transportation. And then I would go to work at night. So that taught me a lot in that time, right? At such a young age, to pretty much be on my own and having to have a job, save money for the future, for whenever I would leave that place, and also keeping up with school and ensuring that I was going to be able to graduate. So that's kind of where Tara started.
Holy shit. I love it. Because the thing that I love, like when I learn about like where things started, is that it helps me place the different breadcrumbs of the person I got to engage with like 6 months ago. And so what I find is that those different journeys along the way are more similar than we are different based on the people we connect with. So take me through, you went from that space of that kind of, in those formative years of teenage years, you went from that space of having to travel, transport, be around different cultures, be uprooted out of your house, living somewhere different. Take me to where you are today.
So from then, I didn't have a lot of direction, and it took me quite a few years to figure things out. And it wasn't until I had my son that I truly started thinking about my future and what does that look like, right? What am I doing with my life? Am I buying a house? At this point, I'm just renting places, and that fit me. But once, the whole family aspect came into it, I was like, what am I doing with my life? And what is the long-term goals, even just for a job?
Yeah.
And I was just working in the service industry, bartending, for those years, and that worked well for me. And I had all the things I wanted, but I really realized very quickly, like, what does the rest look like? You probably can't do this for the rest of your life. This is good for now. So that's when I started looking for a house. And through looking for a house is when something sparked in me and realizing I really liked real estate, probably more so than the next person, in the sense of I really enjoyed looking at the houses. And I didn't have this big budget or anything. So, I'm looking at houses that have all the wallpaper and the green or red carpet, smell like mothballs. Yeah. But I loved it, going into these places, and I could see the vision and what they could be. And so I was just like, this is, sparking excitement in me. And it's also a little abnormal to be so excited, I feel like, to look at houses that are pretty crappy. So that's where that love came. And that's where, that whole initial of like, maybe this could be something, maybe this should be like my career path of getting into real estate.
Yeah. It seems like those different moments helped set you up for where you fell into the thing that you actually loved.
Yeah, honestly, because as I said, I didn't have direction. And, once I got pregnant with my son, I did start going to college, which was something I never wanted to do. But I was like, okay, I'm going to have, a child. So I really need to figure this out. And my criteria, it's so funny, was what could I do in the shortest amount of time, make the most amount of money, and was going to be there, right? So after I was done with college, that it was going to still be there, and I would be able to get a job easily, and it wouldn't be taken away shortly after. So I actually started school for ultrasound tech, and it was only 2 years. It made a decent amount of money, and I was like, I could do this. 2 years, that's it. And I started, going through that. And at 8 months pregnant, I was actually leaving my house and on my way to go to school. And I started to fall down my steps. So I knew I'm falling forward, right? I'm holding onto the railing. I'm trying to catch myself. I'm using all of my might. And I know that, like, it's not going to stop me. I'm going to fall, and I'm falling right onto my belly. So I had a decision to make of, I could put my leg underneath me and let that take the, fall, the majority of it anyways, to where I wouldn't fall directly on my stomach. And that's what I did. And I heard something break. I wasn't sure what it was at that time. And I'm laying on the ground now, knowing that I had something in my leg break, and I was too scared to get back up because I'm huge. I'm 8 months pregnant. And I was afraid I would, damage myself more by trying to get up and like find my phone and everything. But it is eventually what I had to do because I was calling out to my neighbors and nobody came. So I had to figure it out. It was another one of those moments of like, well, what are you going to do? You just going to sit here on the ground in the rain crying about it? Or are you going to like get up and do something about it? Yeah. So, I did end up finding my phone, was able to get someone to come get me, take me to the hospital, and my ankle was broken in 3 places. So they were like, you can't be you're non-weight bearing now at this point, because if you put any weight on this ankle, we're going to have to do surgery. We're going to have to put in pins and plates and all the things. So I had to medically withdraw from school. So it's like, even between these times of, thinking you have it figured out, you don't at all. Something happens in your life and you have to make a choice, so it was constant throughout these years and figuring it out.
I completely understand. So for me, I thought I was going to be a career military person. So like, I knew that like, hey, I wanted to join the Army. I was super independent. I thought that was the path. And actually the original career I went into was called the Network System Switch Operator Systems, because I had been in computers and vocational school my junior and senior year. And after I had graduated, I said, I want to be in tech. Well, me and my best friend at the time decided before senior year that we were going into the Army together. We had like this battle buddy program. And so we were like, great, we're going to do this. 3 months before we're scheduled to leave, he decides, dude, I'm not going. I'm like, what? We've already spent almost a year planning this, from duty stations to other things we want to do, other things we want to accomplish. And it wasn't there. And as I got into school, went through it, the day before graduation, they come to me and they said, hey, if you want to, you can reclassify, because we're overstrength in this career. You were a top % in the class. We're going to offer you the opportunity to transfer to something else. And that transfer actually created a whole nother wave of things for me to do. And it was kind of interesting because that's how I got into mental health and became a mental health provider in the Army. I had no idea that plan was going to happen, but and life happens that way. And
it was what you were meant to do, right? Because for me, I would have never been happy in a job and, working for an employer. And that gave me the opportunity to open my first business after that happened, So as you said, it didn't go the way you planned, but you ended up where you were meant to be.
Exactly. And it's beautiful how those moments, like I look at them and call them defining moments. They're like, everybody has these group of defining moments that created the outcomes that they are today. And it's amazing in hindsight, looking back and be like, thank God that thing didn't work out.
Yeah.
Because had it done work out, I don't know if I would be anywhere near doing the things that I'm doing today.
Yeah, it's such a blessing, to be honest. I lived through a period of the woe is me, poor me. Why was this like this? Why was my life like this? All these different things, right? Why didn't I have a mom? A dad who wasn't really present, even though he took care of us and provided for the family.
Yeah.
Just all these different things that you go through and you can't even understand as a child or how to process them. So I went into that whole poor me. And I'm so glad, I changed my mindset and got out of that and learned to be different, because now I can see how all of those things benefited me so that I could become the person I am today and use those things not only for myself, but to help other people.
Yeah, I'm curious how those moments and how it shaped you as a person and how it helps your decision-making process today, like on just some of the projects you're currently working on.
Yeah. So, I mean, not even business-wise, but I just think even simplifying it to like the first major thing that happened in my life, right, was having a child.
Yes.
So it shaped me into realizing the things I wanted to do differently and down from being a mom and being present and spending time with them to the emotional part of it, right? And trying to never sugarcoat things with them. Since they were born, I did things that other people didn't do, but it was based off of my own beliefs. I'm not saying that my choices are right versus someone else's, but it was like even Santa Claus and stuff. I chose never to tell my kids about Santa Claus because I didn't want them coming into the world thinking that I had lied to them from the beginning.
I'm 100% with you. There's no person that's breaking into my house to give you gifts based upon things. You can talk about the spirit of it, but hell no, I'm not doing that. I'm not building a relationship on lies.
Exactly. And that was just a personal choice. Like I said, I don't have anything against anyone else, but for me, that just was an absolute no. I wanted my kids to always be able to trust me and know what I was telling them was truth, no matter how hard it was or, how easy it was for me. So and through that, I can say, now my son is 16, my daughter is 10, and I see the amazing individuals they are based off these little things that I chose to do. And I think it truly has made them into the amazing individuals, that I've been blessed to have in my life.
No, that's wonderful. Just thinking about the kids, have you noticed that any of your kids picked up any of your habits or tendencies that made you so strong?
Oh yeah, my son is like all me, and sometimes I look at it as a great thing because I see the things that he's so secure, which I wasn't at his age. So I'm glad that he is. He can make the hard decisions. He's not just chasing after the girls. And does he love girls? Absolutely. But he can step back and be like, you know what? This girl's making decisions that I don't like, so I'm not going to continue in this relationship. And he does. And when he says he's done, he's done. He doesn't go back and forth, which I love, Mm-hmm. And if he likes someone and it, just isn't working out, he's just not that into it, then he just says that. He doesn't continue on, how we do sometimes because we're comfortable. We want that person to be there with us, support us and all these things. He doesn't do that. So I can see these things in him of that strength, right? That he's secure. And also I see my no nonsense attitude and not showing a lot of emotions. He's definitely gotten. So sometimes I'm trying to soften that up a bit.
I can understand. I have 3 little girls here and my son is 18. And so it's unique how I didn't grow up in the same household as my son. But when we get around each other, we're literally the same person in different moments where it's like, hey, do you want to do this? Sure, why not? And they're like, do you get excited over anything? Sports, cars. That's about it. Like if we're looking at nice cars, then yeah, we're going to get super excited, but we're pretty melancholy most of the time. And then it's interesting seeing the dynamic of the 3 daughters. Just like one who's actually sick is 100% like me. Creative imagination, things going ahead, very vivid, but very direct. And so it makes it quite unique. Some of the things she says, I go, ooh, that was so good. I'm not going to punish you. That you're telling the truth.
Yeah.
At different moments. No, it's great seeing those things. So I'm listening to, you went from a situation that got you into real estate. Like what things in real estate have you invested in or what are you doing currently today?
So what we've invested in is single family homes and multifamily homes. We've also done short-term rentals as well. So like the Airbnb, VRBO space. Mm-hmm. And from all of that, we were growing, and I wasn't feeling fulfilled. Yeah. And my brother's my partner in business. And I was just like, what are we doing? And do you feel the same way? Because sometimes it's hard to say those things, right? Especially with a partner in business where they could be like, what are you talking about? And not even agree. So I finally said to him, I don't feel fulfilled. Like, what about you? Like this whole growing this business of real estate is going well, but I just don't feel good. And I don't feel like I'm doing the things I used to do where I would give back to the community a lot more. So from that and from that hard conversation, luckily he was feeling the same way and we were kind of on the same page. We've actually started Revitalizing a Community, which has been going on like the last 2 years with buying the houses, redoing them and either renting them out or flipping them so that people could, have a nice home to live in regardless, whether they're renting or, buying. We always, that was our motto. We felt that everyone deserves a nice house to live in. So from that, we took it a step further, and now we're getting in the community and educating them. So I actually got to go into the high school and start teaching about passive income. We've been getting into the senior centers and talking to them, just trying to figure out how we can be a resource to the community. How can we bring value? Like, what is their age range looking for, in a sense? You know what I mean? What are their needs? And we're now also partnering with Auberly and having some meetings set up with different nonprofits in the area that are, based in McKeesport, and finding out how can we start educating the community as a whole versus just going into, these specific spaces. And so we're going to start holding our own events so that we can give back to the entire community of anyone who's interested in learning more about generational wealth, passive income, how to budget, credit, all those things.
It's amazing hearing you talk about all these cool financial literacy things, because I'm sure, like myself, that wasn't something we were educated on as a child.
No, not at all.
No.
Not even in school.
No, not at all. I knew how to do square dance. I learned how to balance a checkbook, but it was always playing defense and never playing offense.
I never learned even how to balance a checkbook, to be completely honest. We didn't have any financial literacy. And I did find out that, at least in our state, they just passed it this last spring to where now a financial class is required to graduate. But on the other end of that, since it's brand new, I will tell you that the teacher also shared with me that she has no curriculum and they're not going by anything. And she's basically just trying to figure it out on her own, what she should be teaching and what would be beneficial.
Yeah, it seems so it's so taboo that people don't actually want to talk about financial literacy and actually be accountable about it. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with you. And the other thing that I don't like about it is not only taught financial literacy, but also my beliefs and my personal opinion is that in school, you are not looked at as you're going to succeed if you don't go to college. And that was another big thing for me, to start being able to encourage these kids to go after their dreams, right? Do you want to be an entrepreneur? Do you want to go into the trades? There's so many other things that you can do and be highly successful that you're not taught at all. And I just think that's really unfair, because it made me feel as an individual that there was something wrong with me because I didn't want to go to college. I didn't want to go to school to graduate, to go back to school to graduate and maybe not have a job, but I'll have a mountain of debt.
It just seems like that system is broken. It's a very contrarian approach you took, of being like, you know what? I'd much rather be in the jungle. I don't want to be a zoo. I don't want to sit there and know when I'm going to get fed and dance for when different kids come to visit on school trips. I'd much rather be out in the wild and hunt for the things that I'm truly passionate about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that should be encouraged more. And another thing I'll say that I don't feel is encouraged is failing. To be successful, you have to fail over and over and over again. And in school, you're taught, and even maybe at fault of the parents too, at home, you're taught you're not supposed to make mistakes. You're supposed to do the right things. You're supposed to get the good grades. And that just doesn't set anyone up for success, because I know for me, that was my mindset going into owning my own business and being an entrepreneur, and having no idea that really in reality, it takes failing over and over and over again to truly be successful, because you have to learn from your mistakes. Nobody's coming in as a professional, right?
Nope, not at all.
Yeah. It gets me thinking about a lot of things, which all kind of go back to mindset. And hey, let's talk about how schools were only made because they wanted to create factory workers. So if you want to be an employee, it's the perfect place to be. But if you don't, and you want to think outside the box, you want to have a vision, you want to create your own future and your own success, that is not getting you there at all. And it's not going to help. It's actually going to hinder you, which is unfortunate for, like I said, all of our kids, because everyone's different and they are not made to support everyone who's different. It's made to support one pathway, and that's it.
I definitely agree with that. And I think that it's something that I believe our generation is changing that narrative.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you think about it, I was sharing this, like, I'd like to study history in general, is to see kind of the path. So my wife, I said, okay, look at a couple generations of your family members. What was the ceiling and what was the standard of what a woman was supposed to be? Like, what were those things? And so the reality is every generation has a different definition of how they want to define things. And so if you look at it, it's like, hey, you're either a teacher, you're a nurse, homemaker, teacher, nurse, homemaker. And that was kind of the standards. And it's beautiful seeing how now today we're like, well, we don't have to follow that paradigm. That paradigm can be broken. You can go ahead and you can create a business based upon your actual desires and not what society thinks you should be doing. And if we look at the same with children, like some of the kids that are the troublemakers in general in class are the ones who are not creatively inspired. They're not meant to sit in an institution and sit there and just sit at a desk for 8 hours a day. One of the beautiful things that's happening now is homeschooling, because maybe it only takes you an hour a day to get the learning that you need. And then you can go outside and you can homestead or whatever you need to do. So like one of the neighbor's kids, he goes to this private school where he actually works on the farm. So like it's kinesthetic based learning where he's going through and he's like able to work with his hands, because that kid would not have done well in class. In a structured class for 7 hours a day and moving him around maybe 45 minutes here, 45 minutes there is not going to work for that type of kid. And I think we're finding more of them.
No, and to be completely honest, I see a lot of boys struggle with that from homeschooling and being in that, group and environments. Boys they have energy. They're meant to move and do things. And I'm not saying that there's not girls too. I'm just saying I've noticed it more in the males than I have the females. But I don't think any kid thrives or does well sitting 45 minutes and you move literally to another class in another 45 minutes. And my son still doesn't do well to this day. He does very well in school. He needs no help and super independent, but he's having lab classes, chemistry classes that are over 2 hours long. Like, how do you think that is, helping in any type of way for any kid to have to be 45 minutes is too long. You know what I mean? Over 2 hours. So even still today, we're dealing with all of these issues that to me and probably to you and to other people seem like, how have we not figured this out yet?
I think it's prime for disruption. I look at the education system as prime for disruption because I understand certain parents have jobs and they need a structured place for their kid to go, and the cost of daycare and other things are adding up. But I see it as a prime disruption methodology where as a community, as we're building certain communities, we can be able to answer those questions per se and go through it. And I think that's the beautiful thing about life is that the only constant is change. So for many, many years, if we zoom back 60 years ago, the United States we know looked completely different than what it is today. And then so what it will look like in the next 60 years is going to be dependent on us being the leaders that help create and find the data that's necessary to inspire that change.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So most
in it too,
Absolutely. Yeah, that would be so much fun just to be able to go in like, hey, let's test it. Maybe my theory is completely wrong, but I'm willing to get a test case to figure out who can actually be able to serve. And so you said something that was really important for those, like when I'm looking at kids, every adult, I realize that there's a little kid inside of them at some point in time. And I think that the people that are listening to this podcast are in a place where they're in a place of indecision because number one, you're not listening to this podcast unless you're in a space where there's something else you want to do, but the comfort of where they're currently sitting is stronger than the discomfort of the meaning they want to have in life. What would you suggest to that individual that's listening to it based upon your story and the meaning you were able to find in your life?
The only thing I can say about that is you need to follow your dreams, period, because there's not one person at the end of their life that says, man, I really wish I wouldn't have done that. No, they're saying the complete opposite. They're saying, I wish I would have started sooner, or they're having regrets because they knew that they had this passion, this purpose, and they never followed it. And now on their deathbed, they're wishing they would have done all these different things and lived this completely different life. And I just don't want to be that person.
Oh, I completely agree with you. Have you ever read the book Die Empty?
No, I have not.
Okay. So the premise for everybody that's listening was the book is about, they have you go through an exercise where you zoom out. You're on your deathbed and you're looking at things. It's your end of your life. Are you currently in alignment of living the type of life that by the time it's over, you leave this earth with no regrets?
Mm-hmm.
Like one of the stories he talks about is, hey, if you found out you had some type of terminal cancer and you had 6 months to live, what things would you be doing? Who would you be spending time with? And like, how would you finish strong? And then if you live from that place of intentionality going forward, then you'll end up a high probability of dying empty, where it's like you left it all out in the field.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not an easy thing to do. So I'm not going to sit here and say that it's easy or it's not difficult. For any of us to live in that type of mindset is hard, because life is life and you're in the thick of it each day. But the other thing I heard that a mentor once told me as well, which is very similar, is I want you to write your eulogy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like really eye-opening. What are people going to say about you? What type of life did you live? Maybe not even your regrets, but just the way you're living right now. What would that look like, and what would people say, and who would be there?
I'm actually going to leave that as a nugget that people need to do after they listen to this episode, is write your eulogy. And if somebody wants to send me their eulogy that they wrote, I'll read it straight out, because I think that's so powerful of living intentionally. Like, as an engineer by nature, I always look at like, what's the product I want to deliver to a customer. And so like, if the product I want to like send them, like it's like, hey, I want you to be able to do this. Now I know how to reverse engineer that process. And actually that's pretty cool thinking about those things.
And that's a good way to look at business too, which was something I learned throughout. That is definitely something I didn't know. What you just said is reverse engineering. What is the goal, and then how do you get there? You have to work backwards. You have to have these smaller, like 1-year goals, but then you have to look at what is the bigger picture. Where do I want to be 5-10 years down the road? Because then you have to work backwards from that of how are you going to accomplish it? And then once you figure out how you're going to accomplish that on a daily basis, that's how you measure, are you doing what you're supposed to be doing, right? Because I could say in a year, I want to make an extra $200,000. But if I don't look at that and say, okay, well, let's break that down month by month, what does that look like? What do I need to do within that month? Because when we have even just these short-term yearly goals, I see so many people, they come up with it, but then you know what they're doing? At the end of the year, they're like, oh shit, I didn't do anything towards that goal. Now they're trying to hurry up and do something towards it. So you really need to break that down and be following it as little as, week to week. What are you doing to work towards that? Then on the month scale, and then, quarterly, and then into the year. So you can hit those targets and not get so far behind that it's like, now that's not going to happen. Oh, maybe we'll do it next year.
Mm-hmm. I couldn't agree more. And the other thing I find is that we overestimate what we can do in a year and underestimate what we can do in a decade. Mm-hmm. Because like, if you look at it, the listeners are in a place where I always share them, it's 1 to 3 years of change. Like the decisions you're making today, 1 to 3 years from now, because all we're doing is living the residuals of our thoughts, beliefs, and actions. So if you're willing to do the necessary work in the next 1 to 3 years, everything can be completely different. From the conversations you're having, the people you're associating with, the relationships you're having, how your physical body looks, like all that can change in a year. Mm-hmm. But we have to have a proper plan with a high probability of success. And if you overwhelm yourself with creating that plan, your probability is very, very low. And I think it's phenomenal, some of the things you're sharing for them, and they need to understand, like, measure, break it down, get started, because you'll be amazed at what you can do in a couple years of life.
Yeah, like you said, you'd be amazed in a year how much your life can change. Like if I told you about my last year, you'd be like, what in the world, and how are you even still standing? And we all have, years of that, or maybe a year like that, but it changes you drastically. And like you said, just get started, just be consistent. The littlest, most boring things that you think like, oh, that doesn't matter. That's actually what matters the most, is doing those redundant, boring, consistent things over and over that moves your needle more so than having this grandiose, I'm going to do this. Well, to do that, you have to do these things that you essentially don't want to do and you think are boring.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I look at tasks that are exciting or cool, but things that are boring are exceptional. Because if you can get yourself to be disciplined enough to do the boring constantly. I remember hearing, I think it was Zig Ziglar. He talked about it in a book. He said there was this guy that kept messaging him and he was like, hey, I want to come spend a day with you. He's like, why would a person want to come spend a day with me? And he's like, he's like, I don't really think that's going to be worthy of your time. They're like, well, I'll pay you 25 grand to spend it. He's like, well, my calendar just opened. He said the guy came down, spent time with him, and just sat there for a couple of days. He's like, you do the same thing every single day. And he goes, yeah. And I've done the same thing for the last 20 years. The difference is I'm slowly but surely moving closer to my goal because I've reduced it down to the smallest task possible. And that sunk home for me because I go, it's boring. My exercise, like while the exercise is variant, I know that the exercise window is the same time. I go ahead and I'm going to stretch the same amount of time. I'm going to hit a sauna, same amount of time. Drink fluids, connect with people. But I know those singles will end up just adding up over a period of time, and they'll keep there. And that consistency is what matters, you know?
Yeah.
So one of the things I wanted to land the plane with for different individuals that are listening right now, I'm going to start asking a couple of like rapid fire questions. And these are questions that a person can take away, they can implement in their life, and they have the opportunity to like get started and start moving towards their dreams. So one of the questions I wanted to ask you is, if you could give a message to that 16-year-old girl that happened to go to that home, what would you tell her?
I would tell her to use what she learns out of that experience to propel her into whatever it is that, you know, her dreams, her aspirations, her goals are. Because as I said at the beginning, for me, I had a victim mentality, the poor me, and didn't know how to use those things at that time to really help me to become who I am today. And even though they still did, I feel like it took me many, many years to get to where I'm at. So I want to get people there quicker. And that's why I say, don't take this as a bad thing, even though it may suck in the moment. Really like take whatever you can from it and learn whatever you can. And those skills, the disciplines, whatever it is that you have to go through, use it to your advantage.
And then the second question is going to be, like, when you zoom out for your life 10 years from now, what message would you send to that person? So I'll give you an example of for like me. If I was going to go ahead, because I'm turning 40 this year. So my 50-year-old self, the thing I want to do to my 50-year-old self, if I could send a message, is that I am so damn glad that I'm consistent today, because that consistency is going to allow me to know that my life that I comprehend and love every single day at 40, I can only imagine what it's going to look like at 50. And so because of that, of the consistency and your drive, your desire, your passion, you're creating a framework for your children that make everything possible because you made the choice to actually live your dreams and have meaning in life. Mm-hmm. So if you're going to say a message to yourself in general, 10 years from now, what would that be?
Yeah, so 10 years from now, I think I would be thinking about the fact that where you are today doesn't really matter in the big scheme of things, is what I've learned, you know, through all these years. So I'd want to tell myself that these blips or these different things that happen really aren't going to matter probably in 10 years from now. And I think that's something we have to consistently look at over and over and over again, no matter what age we're at, because when you're going through the hard things, it can feel like you're being crushed or you're not going to make it, or, you know, you want to quit. But I know that from the past, that in 10 years now, I'll be in a much better place than I am now. I've learned so much more throughout that time that I'll be able to use not only for myself, but continuing to help people throughout this journey.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. So people want to like engage or learn more about what you're doing, be inspired more by your story. Where can they connect with you or follow you?
Yeah, I think any of the social media platforms, I'm on all of them, like LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. It's just my name, Tara Zaluski. So it's not a common name. I think you should be able to find me pretty easily. And also, if you're wanting to learn more just about the real estate world, I would say at our website, which is rtz.one. So that's rtz.one.
Oh, beautiful. So, Tara, thank you for sharing your story, sharing about all the things that make you you, because I like I said, when I first met you, I just knew that there was something unique. And then I knew that we had a lot in common just from the way you carried yourself, the way that you were open and having conversations at dinner. And I just really appreciate your time today.
Yeah, I appreciate this. And I'm so excited to be the first person on.
Exactly. There's only one. So you get to be there. So as always, listeners, you know how to find me. It's at Sylvania Harad across all channels. And stay humble, stay hungry, and cheers, everybody.